The blood on her hands wasn't hers. Serena stared at it in the moonlight streaming through the tavern window, watching it cake under her fingernails. 3 hours ago, she'd been worried about whether the baker's son would finally ask to court her. Now she was worried she'd die before sunrise. The man she'd killed, and there was no pretending otherwise, had cornered her in the alley behind her father's apothecary. He'd been a guard from the Southern Territories. He'd said her bloodline had been flagged, that the Alpha Council had questions about her mother's family tree. She'd known exactly what that meant. The purges had started 6 months ago, anyone with even a whisper of ancient bloodline magic disappearing in the night. Her grandmother had burned their family records the week before they'd taken her. When the guard reached for her, something inside her had snapped. Not broken, but woken. The dagger she'd grabbed from her father's desk had moved faster than she expected, guided by instincts she didn't know she possessed. One moment he was reaching for her. The next, he was bleeding out on the cobblestones, surprise frozen on his face. She'd run for her life. Now she was 2 territories over, in a trading post town, washing blood in a basin, while the tavern below thrummed with voices. Her horse was limping. Her coin purse was light. And she had nowhere left to go that the Alpha's reach couldn't find her. Her reflection in the water showed a stranger, hair wild from riding, eyes too wide, a smudge of dirt across her cheekbone that might have been blood. She looked feral, and guilty. Just then, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed up the stairwell. She grabbed the dagger she'd cleaned and hidden in her skirts, pressing herself against the wall beside the door. Her heart hammered against her ribs hard enough to hurt. The door creaked open slowly. He had to duck to enter the room, this man who was definitely not the tavern keeper she'd paid. He was tall enough to make the low ceiling feel suffocating, with dark hair tied back and eyes that reflected lamplight like a wolf's. He wore the black leather of the King's Guard, and twin blades hung at his hips with the ease of someone who knew how to use them. An Alpha. She could feel it before she saw the silver ring on his thumb. The air itself seemed to bend around him, thick with power. "Serena Ashwick," he said, voice low and rough. Not a question. A confirmation. She tightened her grip on the dagger, knowing it would be useless. "You have the wrong room." His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "I have exactly the right room. And you have about 30 seconds before the bounty hunters downstairs figure out what I already know." He moved faster than any human should, and suddenly his hand was wrapped around her wrist, pulling her close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. "You're in danger," he whispered against her ear, breath warm on her neck. "And if you want to survive the night, you're going to act like you're mine." Then the window shattered, and arrows began to fly. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe. It will make my day. Now, back to our story. Serena's instinct was to pull away, to run like she'd been running for the past 3 hours. But his grip was iron, and the arrow that punched through the space where her head had been a second earlier told her everything she needed to know about her options. He yanked her down behind the bed frame as another arrow splintered the doorframe. 3 more thudded into the wall in rapid succession. Professional. Coordinated. How many? His voice was calm, like this was a minor inconvenience rather than an assassination attempt. "How many what?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Bounty hunters. How many did you see downstairs?" I don't know. I wasn't looking for..." Another volley of arrows cut her off. The tavern keeper was going to be furious about the property damage. If he survived. The Alpha, she still didn't know his name, drew one of his blades in a smooth motion. The steel caught the moonlight, and she saw symbols etched along its length that seemed to pulse with their own light. "Stay behind me," he ordered, and before she could argue, he was moving. She'd never seen anyone fight like that. He was a blur of controlled violence, deflecting arrows with his blade, his movements swift and brutal. One of the attackers made it through the window, a woman with a crossbow and cold eyes, and he closed the distance before she could reload, disarming her with a twist that Serena heard snap even from across the room. The woman went down. Didn't get back up. "We're leaving." He was back at her side, barely winded. "Do exactly what I say, when I say it. I don't even know who you are. Darius." He pulled her to her feet, his hand still wrapped around her wrist. And you can hate me for this later. But right now, you're going to put your arm around me and smile like you're enjoying yourself. What? They're looking for a woman alone, not an alpha's companion. His eyes locked on hers, and she felt the weight of command in them, the power that made her body want to obey before her mind caught up. Can you do that? Or do I carry you out over my shoulder? The sound of boots thundering up the stairs made the decision for her. She slid her arm around his waist, let him pull her against his side. His body was warm, solid, and she could feel the coiled strength in him, barely leashed. His smell made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. They stepped over the fallen woman's body and out into the hallway. 2 men were coming up the stairs, weapons drawn. They looked at Darius, at his Kingsguard leathers, at the way he held Serena possessively against him, and their steps faltered. "The Alpha Council sends its regards," one of them said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The Alpha Council," Darius said pleasantly, "can take its regards and shove them somewhere anatomically uncomfortable. This woman is under my protection. Contracted companion under the King's Guard. Unless you'd like to explain to your superiors why you challenged a direct order from the Crown?" The weight of authority in his voice made the threat clear, even if he hadn't outright claimed his title. Serena's breath caught. The way he'd said it. The Crown. King's Guard. She was pressed against the Alpha King himself, and he'd just claimed her as his own. The bounty hunters exchanged glances. One of them, the younger one, was sweating. "We have orders, and I have a very limited amount of patience." Darius's voice dropped to something darker. "Walk away, or join your friend upstairs. Your choice." They walked away. Darius kept her moving down the stairs, through the tavern common room where people suddenly found their drinks fascinating, out into the street where 2 horses waited. Both were massive, bred for alpha riders, dark coats gleaming in the moonlight. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Yes, but—" "Good." He lifted her onto one of the horses before she could finish the sentence, then mounted the other in a fluid motion. "Stay close. We have about 10 minutes before they regroup and realize I just lied through my teeth." "What do you mean, lied?" But he was already moving, and her horse followed his without any guidance from her, as if it knew who was in command. They rode hard. The town blurred past them, then the checkpoint at the northern gate where Darius flashed something that made the guards step aside without question. They were now in open territory, the forest looming dark on either side of the road, and Serena's mind was finally catching up to what had just happened. The Alpha King had just rescued her, had claimed her as his, had killed for her. She didn't know which part terrified her more. They rode until her thighs burned, until the road narrowed to a path, and the path disappeared into forest. Darius finally slowed, guiding them off into the trees where the canopy blocked out the moon. He dismounted, then came to help her down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, and his hands steadied her, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. "There's a safe house another hour north," he said quietly. "But the horses need rest. We'll wait here until—" "Why?" The word came out sharper than she'd intended. "Why did you save me?" His eyes found hers in the darkness. "Because you're worth saving." "You don't know me." "I know enough." He released her, stepping back, and she hated how her body immediately missed his warmth. "I know your bloodline. I know what you're capable of, even if you don't. And I know the Alpha Council will burn this entire kingdom to the ground before they let you live long enough to figure it out." Her grandmother's face flashed through her mind, the way her hands had shaken as she'd fed their family history to the flames. "What do you know about my bloodline?" "More than you do, apparently." He moved to the horses, checking their legs with practiced efficiency. "Your family descends from the Unmakers, the last people in the realm born with magic that can sever bonds." "I don't have magic. I'm human. You killed a trained Alpha Guard with a letter opener and your bare hands." He looked at her over the horse's back. "Don't pretend that was normal human strength." The memory of that moment in the alley rushed back, the way the dagger had felt like an extension of her will, the surge of something hot and fierce in her blood, the guard's shock as her strength had exceeded anything he'd expected. Most alphas are bound to the council through blood oaths, Darius continued. Ancient magic that ensures loyalty. Obedience. It's meant to maintain order, prevent wars between territories. His voice hardened. But someone on the council has been corrupting those bonds, turning them into chains, making puppets out of some of the most powerful alphas in the realm. And my bloodline can break those bonds, free them. He finished with the horses and came closer, and she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Your ancestors' magic is the only thing that can sever a forced bond without killing the alpha in the process. That's why they're hunting your family. That's why everyone, with even a drop of Unmaker blood, has been disappearing. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. You need me. Something flickered across his face. Yeah. That's why you saved me. Not because I'm worth saving, but because I'm useful to you. Both can be true. She laughed, the sound bitter. And what happens when I've served my purpose? Do I disappear like the rest of my family? No. The certainty in his voice made her pause. I'm not them, Serena. I'm not bound to the council. Kings are exempt from blood oaths. It's the one advantage of this crown. He reached up, rubbing the back of his neck in a gesture that was almost human, almost vulnerable. My armies, my allies, half my own guard. They're compromised. I've been watching them turn into something else, watching them obey orders that make no sense, and I've been powerless to stop it. Until now. I have a chance now with you. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his breath on her face. I won't lie to you. I do need your power, but I also need you alive, and willing, and that means keeping you safe. Even from me. The last part made her breath catch. What's that supposed to mean? His jaw tightened. It means you're human, and I'm an alpha whose wolf just decided you smell like everything it's ever wanted. It means we need to keep moving before I do something we'll both regret. Heat flooded through her, pooling low in her belly. She should have been afraid, should have run. Instead, she found herself swaying closer, drawn by something she didn't understand. We should go, she whispered. Yes. But neither of them moved. Hikiski. Hand came up, fingers brushing the dirt from her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. You have blood in your hair. It's been that kind of night. His mouth quirked. Well, it's about to get worse. The safe house is in disputed territory. We'll have to pass 3 checkpoints, and at least one of them will have guards looking for you. How do we get past them? The same way we got past the bounty hunters. His thumb traced her jawline, and she shivered. You stay close. Act like you're mine, and let me do the talking. And if they don't believe you, then things get messy. He dropped his hand, stepped back, and she could breathe again. But I'd rather avoid that if possible. The King's Guard isn't supposed to be running around claiming women as contracted companions. Is that what I am? A contracted companion? It's a loophole. Alphas can claim temporary protection over someone for political purposes. It expired the moment we crossed the border back there. He moved back to the horses. But most people won't know that. Most people will see an alpha with his companion and mind their own business. And when we reach this safe house, then we talk. I tell you everything I know about your bloodline, about what's happening with the council, about what I need from you. He mounted his horse, looked down at her, and you decide if you're willing to help me. She should have said no, should have taken her chances alone. But her grandmother was dead, her family was dead, and the guard she'd killed would have just been the first. She was tired of running, so against her best judgment, Serena climbed back onto her horse. Let's go. The first checkpoint was easy. The guards saw Darius's ring, his King's Guard leathers, the way he kept Serena close, and waved them through without question. The second checkpoint was harder. The guard captain was older, more experienced, and his eyes lingered too long on Serena's face. Haven't seen any notices about the King's Guard traveling with companions through this territory, he said slowly. Haven't seen any notices requiring me to report my personal affairs to border guards, Darius replied evenly. The captain's expression hardened. We've had reports of a fugitive. Young woman, dark hair, Traveling alone. Wanted for questioning by the Alpha Council. Good thing my companion isn't traveling alone then. Still need to verify her identity. Council's orders. Serena felt Darius tense beside her, felt the shift in his energy that meant violence was about to happen. But before he could move, before the situation could spiral, she leaned into him, let her hand rest on his thigh in a gesture that was unmistakably intimate. "How much longer?" she asked, letting a hint of impatience creep into her voice. "You promised we'd reach the inn before midnight." The captain's gaze flicked between them, reassessing. A fugitive wouldn't be draped over an alpha like she owned him, wouldn't be looking at him with barely concealed want. "Let them through," the captain said finally. They rode on. "Quick thinking," Darius murmured once they were out of earshot. "I'm a quick learner." She kept her hand where it was, telling herself it was just for show, just in case anyone was watching. The way his muscles tensed under her palm suggested he knew better. The third checkpoint was deserted. Just an empty guard post, and fresh blood on the ground. Darius dismounted immediately, weapons drawn. "Stay on the horse." "What happened here?" "Nothing good." He moved through the checkpoint with predatory caution, checking the guard post, the surrounding trees. When he came back, his expression was grim. 3 guards, all killed in the last hour. Whoever's hunting you has a lot more resources than bounty hunters. He mounted up, his jaw tight. "We need to move faster." They abandoned the road entirely, plunging into the forest where the trees grew so thick the moonlight barely penetrated. Serena's horse stumbled over roots she couldn't see, and more than once she nearly fell before Darius reached back to steady her. "There," he said finally, pointing ahead. The safe house was smaller than she'd expected, just a stone cottage tucked into a hillside, so overgrown with vines it was nearly invisible. Darius dismounted, helped her down, then led the horses around back where a small stable waited. Inside, the cottage was sparse but clean. A single room with a fireplace, a table, a narrow bed. Darius lit a lamp, and golden light flooded the space. "It's not much," he said. "Better than a prison cell." She sank into the chair by the table, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had been carrying her was draining away, leaving her hollowed out and shaking. He moved around the room with quiet efficiency, starting a fire, pulling out supplies from a hidden compartment in the floor. Bread, dried meat, a skin of water. He set them on the table in front of her. "Eat." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." His voice softened. "You've been running on fear for hours. Your body needs fuel." She wanted to argue, but her hands were already reaching for the bread, tearing into it with unladylike desperation. It was stale, but it was food, and she hadn't realized how empty she'd been until the first bite hit her stomach. Darius watched her eat, his expression unreadable. When she'd finished half the loaf and some of the meat, he finally spoke. "Your grandmother," he said quietly. She knew what was coming. That's why she burned the records. Serena's throat tightened. "You knew her?" "No, but I knew of her. She was one of the last unmakers who'd actually manifested the ability. The council had been watching her for years." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "When they finally came for her, she'd already erased everything that could have led them to you." "She died in the purge," Serena whispered. "She died protecting you." He held her gaze. "And now you have a choice. You can keep running, keep hiding, hope they never find you. Or you can stand and fight." "I don't know how to fight. I'm an apothecary's daughter who got lucky with a dagger. You're an unmaker." The words hung in the air between them. "And whether you know how to use your power yet or not, it's there. I felt it when I found you. Every alpha within a mile radius felt it. That's why the bounty hunters were so eager. That's why the council wants you dead." She stood, gazing to the window. Outside, the forest was dark and silent. "And if I help you? If I learn to use this power, what then? Do I become your weapon?" He moved closer, and she felt the heat of him at her back. "Right now you're a fugitive. A target. But if we expose the corruption, break the bonds they're using to control the council, you become something else, someone they can't touch. Someone like you? No, someone with your own power, your own choices. His hand settled on her shoulder, gentle but grounding. I won't lie and say I don't need your help. I do, but I'm not asking you to be my weapon, Serena. I'm asking you to be my ally. She turned to face him, and the space between them felt charged, dangerous. What's in it for you, besides breaking the Council's control? His eyes darkened. The satisfaction of watching corrupt alphas lose everything they've built on lies and blood magic. And maybe, he stopped himself. Maybe what? Maybe the chance to figure out why my wolf decided you're worth starting a war over. Her breath caught. That's just, we barely know each other. I know. His thumb brushed across her shoulder, a small, devastating touch. But knowing that doesn't change what I feel every time I'm near you. Doesn't change the fact that walking away from you right now feels physically impossible. She should have been terrified. Instead, she found herself leaning in, drawn by the same inexplicable pull. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. Probably the worst one I've had all year. But his head was lowering, his mouth inches from hers. Then their window exploded inward. Darius had her behind him before she could blink, his blade out, his body a wall between her and whatever was coming through. A figure landed in a crouch amid the broken glass. Another alpha, male, with the Council's crest burned into his leather armor. The Council sends its regards, he said, and his voice was wrong, flat and emotionless. Puppeted. Stand down, Darius ordered. The alpha attacked anyway. They fought in the small space of the cottage, and Serena pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way. But as she watched, she realized something was wrong. Darius was faster, stronger, clearly the better fighter, but he was pulling his punches, avoiding lethal strikes. He's compromised, Darius growled, deflecting a blow that should have taken his head off. Bonded. If I kill him, it'll alert the Council to exactly where we are. The alpha came at him again, relentless, mechanical. And then his eyes locked on Serena, and his trajectory shifted. She grabbed the nearest thing, a cast-iron pan from by the fireplace, and swung it with all her strength. It connected with his temple with a sound that made her stomach turn. The alpha stumbled, and Darius used the opening to pin him face down on the floor, knee on his spine. Serena, Darius bit out. I need you to do something, and you're not going to like it. What? Touch him, his bare skin, and think about breaking. I don't know how. Your power knows. His eyes found hers, urgent. Trust me. She dropped the pan, her hands shaking. The alpha was grunting under Darius's weight, making sounds that weren't quite human. She knelt beside him, reached out, pressed her palm to the back of his neck where his armor didn't cover. Power erupted through her like lightning. She felt the bond, felt it like a chain wrapped around the alpha's will, choking, controlling. And beneath that, she felt the man he'd been before they'd broken him, screaming silently inside his own mind. Her power surged, and she didn't guide it, didn't control it. She just let it do what it wanted. The chain shattered. The alpha went limp. For a horrible moment, she thought she'd killed him. But then he gasped, a full-body shudder running through him. When his eyes fluttered open, they were clear. What? His voice cracked. What did you do to me? She freed you, Darius said quietly, releasing him. Can you stand? The alpha got to his feet slowly, like a man remembering how his body worked. He looked at his hands, at Darius, at Serena with something like wonder. I couldn't. They made me. He swallowed hard. How long has it been? 3 months, Darius said. Maybe more. The bonds make it hard to track time. The alpha's hands clenched into fists. And the others? Still compromised. All of them. Darius moved to the window, scanning the forest. How many did they send after us? 6. I was the first. The alpha, she still didn't know his name, looked at Serena, What are you? An apothecary's daughter who just learned she's a weapon. Her voice came out bitter. You're not a weapon, Darius said, still watching the trees. You're a liberator. There's a difference. Suddenly, they heard movement in the forest. Darius tensed. They're coming. We need to move. I'll buy you time, the freed alpha said. They still think I'm bonded. I can lead them away. But they'll kill you when they figure out you're free. Then I'll die free. He met Darius's eyes. It's worth it. They left through the back, the freed alpha heading toward the front to intercept the others. Serena didn't look back, but she heard the sounds of fighting as they reached the horses. They rode hard again, this time with no destination in mind except away. The forest blurred around them, and Serena's power hummed under her skin, restless and hungry now that it had tasted freedom. Where are we going? She called. To Darius. Somewhere they can't follow. Somewhere I can keep you safe long enough to teach you control. And then what? He didn't answer. Maybe because the future was just as uncertain for him as it was for her. They rode until the horses couldn't go any farther, until they found a ravine with an overhang that would hide them from aerial scouts. Darius helped her down, and this time when her legs buckled, he caught her, holding her upright. You did well back there, he said softly. I'm so tired, she whispered. He guided her to sit beneath the overhang, then settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Sleep, I'll keep watch. You need rest too. I'm an alpha. I can go days without sleep if I have to. But his eyes were shadowed, and she could see the exhaustion he was hiding. She leaned against him without quite meaning to, and his arm came around her shoulders, tucking her close. He was warm and solid, and for the first time since she'd run from that alley, she felt almost safe. Darius? Why did you really save me? The truth. He was quiet for a long moment. When I tracked you to that tavern, when I felt your power for the first time, my wolf recognized you, not as a tool, not as an asset. His voice dropped. As mine. Her heart stuttered. That's not possible. We just met. Doesn't make it less true. His fingers traced absent patterns on her shoulder. Wolves mate for life, Serena. And mine chose you the moment it caught your scent. Everything else, the politics, the council, your power, that all came second. She felt a panic surge through her body, but exhaustion was pulling her under. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear. What happens now? She murmured, already half asleep. Now we figure out how to keep you alive long enough to break a kingdom. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, gentle and devastating. And then we see if you can stand being stuck with me afterward. She wanted to answer, but sleep dragged her down into darkness. She woke to dawn light and the smell of smoke. Darius was crouched at the ravine's edge, watching something in the distance. When he sensed her stirring, he looked back. They found us. She scrambled up, her heart already racing. How many? Too many. His jaw was tight. And they're not just bounty hunters this time. That's a council enforcement squad. 20 alphas, all bonded, all trained to kill. We can't fight that many. No, we can't. He turned to face her fully, which means we have one option left. Something in his tone made her stomach drop. What option? An alpha's claiming mark. He moved closer, his eyes intense. It's permanent. It would bind us. Not like the corrupted bonds the council uses, but a true mate bond. It would hide your power signature, make you read as mine to any alpha who tried to track you. But it's, you said permanent? It is. His hands framed her face, gentle despite the urgency in his voice. It would tie your life to mine, make you vulnerable to anything that happens to me, and me vulnerable to you in ways no alpha should be. Your unmaker power would be able to touch me, affect me in ways I don't know for sure. Then why? It's the only way to keep you alive. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. My wolf is screaming at me to do it. Politics be damned. And because... He stopped, jaw tightening. Because? I want you to be mine, not as a possession or a weapon, but as a mate. His eyes held hers. And I know it's insane. I know you have every reason not to trust me, but I'm asking anyway. Smoke rose in the distance. Shouts echoed through the ravine. They're coming, Darius said quietly. We're out of time, so I need you to decide, Serena. Do you trust me enough to let me mark you, or do we die here fighting? She thought about her grandmother, burning their history to keep her safe. Thought about the guard bleeding out in the alley, the look of surprise on his face. Thought about the freed Alpha, choosing death over bondage. Thought about Darius, who'd saved her when he could have just taken what he needed. Who'd treated her like a person instead of a weapon. Whose wolf had chosen her, impossibly, in a world that wanted her dead. Do it, she whispered. His eyes widened. Serena, they're going to kill me anyway. At least this way I get to choose. She stepped closer, close enough to feel his breath on her lips. Mark me, make me yours, and we'll figure out the rest later. You need to understand what you're agreeing to. The first arrow struck the rock beside them. No more time, she said. Do it, please. Something shifted in his expression, relief and hunger, and something that might have been love, if love could bloom in the space of a single night. He pulled her against him, one hand tangling in her hair, the other splayed across her lower back. This will hurt. His mouth found hers first, kissing her with a desperation that stole her breath. She kissed him back, pouring everything into it. Her fear, her hope, her reckless trust in a man she barely knew, but somehow recognized all the way to her bones. When he pulled back, his eyes had shifted, more wolf than man. I'm sorry, he whispered against her throat. Then his teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder, and pain exploded through her. But it wasn't purely pain. It was also power, his and hers, twining together, finding each other like rivers meeting. She felt his wolf surge forward, claiming her, and her own power rose to meet it, wild and hungry. For a moment, she felt everything he felt. The fierce protectiveness, the bone-deep need, the fear that he was damning her to his fate. And he felt everything she felt. The loneliness she'd carried since her grandmother died, the terror that had chased her for months, the strange, impossible certainty that being his was exactly where she was meant to be. The mark settled into her skin like a brand, permanent and binding. When he pulled back, his mouth was bloody, and she could feel him in her mind now, a presence that was separate from her own, but somehow intrinsically linked. Mine, his wolf said in her head, satisfied and possessive. Darius wiped the blood from his mouth, his eyes never leaving hers. How do you feel? Like, she touched her neck, felt the raised mark there, already healing. Like I can feel you. Like you're in my head. The mate bond. His hand covered hers. It goes both ways. I can feel you too. Arrows rained down around them, but they bounced off a shield she didn't remember him raising. Magic, pure alpha power protecting what was his. Can they track me now? She asked. No, you read as mine. Part of me. He pulled her toward the horses. But we still need to move. The shield won't hold against 20 alphas for long. They mounted up, but this time when they rode, Serena could feel him even when he was on the other horse, could sense his determination, his concern for her, the way his wolf was preening over the mark on her neck. This is so strange, she thought. You'll get used to it, his voice echoed in her mind. Though, fair warning, you're going to start experiencing some of my emotions, whether you want to or not. Great. What am I feeling from you right now? A pause. Then, quieter. Pride. That you trusted me. And terror that I've doomed you. You saved me, she sent back. There's a difference. They rode until the pursuit fell behind, until the forest opened into mountains, until they found a cave so remote that even the wind seemed to have forgotten it existed. Inside, Darius finally let himself breathe. Serena slid from her horse, exhaustion making her movements clumsy. The mark on her neck throbbed with a heat that was almost pleasant, and through the bond she could feel Darius's wolf settling, satisfied now that she wore his claim. "We're safe here," he said, leading the horses deeper into the cave. "For now." "And then?" She leaned against the cool stone wall, watching him work. Even exhausted, even covered in dirt and blood, he moved with that predatory grace that made her pulse quicken. "Then we plan." He finished with the horses and came to her, reaching out to tilt her chin up, examining the mark. His eyes had returned to normal, but she could still feel the wolf presence beneath, watching her with those same possessive instincts. "How's the pain?" "Bearable." She touched it gently. "It feels warm, like it's alive." "It is in a way. It's our bond made physical." His thumb traced the edge of it, and pleasure sparked through her, unexpected and intense. He felt it too, she knew because his pupils dilated, and his hand stilled. "That's new." "What is?" "The mark is sensitive. When I touch it, you feel—" He did it again, deliberately, and she gasped. That's not fair." His mouth curved into something wicked. "No, but it goes both ways. You can affect me just as easily." She reached up and pressed her, fingers to the pulse point in his throat. When she did, she felt the shudder that ran through him, felt his wolf surge forward with want. "Serena." Her name was a growl, a warning. "You started it." "I'm trying very hard to be honorable here." But his hand had moved to her waist, pulling her closer. "I understand." She looked up at him, this alpha king who'd saved her, claimed her, bound himself to her in a span of 24 hours. "I understand that we just tied our lives together, that I can feel your emotions and you can feel mine, that your wolf thinks I belong to him, and some part of me is apparently fine with that. And," his voice was rough, "I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid." She rose on her toes, her mouth inches from his. "I chose this. Chose you. So stop trying to protect me from my own decisions." He made a sound low in his throat, somewhere between a laugh and a groan. "You're going to be the death of me." He kissed her then, and it was different from the desperate kiss before the marking. This was slower, deeper, a claiming of a different kind. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and through the bond she felt his hunger, his need, the iron control he was barely maintaining. When he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "We should rest," he said, but he didn't let her go. "We should," she agreed, but she didn't step back. The cave was cold, but the warmth radiating from him was better than any fire. He spread his cloak on the ground, and they lay down together, her back against his chest, his arm wrapped around her waist. "Tell me about the capital," she said softly. "About what happens when we go back. When we go back, there will be questions. The council will want to know why I marked a human, why I'm protecting you." His breath stirred her hair. "Some of them will see you as a threat. Others will see you as an opportunity. All of them will underestimate you." "Until I break their bonds? Until you free every alpha they've enslaved?" His arm tightened around her. "And then, they'll realize you're the most dangerous person in the kingdom." "No pressure, right? You can handle it." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder just above the mark. "You've already handled everything else they've thrown at you." She was quiet for a moment, thinking, what about us? What happens to this? "That depends on you." His voice was carefully neutral. "The mark is permanent. The mate bond is real. But how we navigate it, that's up to both of us. I won't force you into anything you don't want. Even though your wolf has decided I'm his." He turned her to face him, his eyes serious. "My wolf doesn't get to make your choices for you, Serena. You're mine by mark, but you're your own person first." Something in her chest loosened at that. "And if I decide I want this? Want you?" His expression shifted into something heated. Then we figure it out together. The politics, the council, your power, all of it. His hand cupped, her face. But I need you to be sure, because once we start down this path, there's no going back. She thought about the guard in the alley, about running, about the moment she'd told Darius to mark her. Every choice she'd made tonight had led her here, to this cave, to this man who'd given her something she hadn't had in months. Hope. I'm sure, she whispered. He kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. His hands mapped her body like he was memorizing her, and she responded with equal hunger, tugging at his shirt until he broke away long enough to pull it over his head. The mark on her neck pulsed with heat, and every touch felt amplified, more intense. She could feel what he felt, the wonder, the need, the bone-deep satisfaction of having his mate in his arms, and it fed her own desire until she was burning with it. "Darius!" she gasped as his mouth found her throat, carefully avoiding the mark. "Tell me to stop." But his hands were already unlacing her dress. "Don't you dare." They made love there on the cave floor, on his cloak spread over stone, with dawn light creeping in through the entrance and the bond between them singing. It was desperate and tender and raw, and when they finally collapsed together, sated and exhausted, Serena felt something settle in her chest that she hadn't even known was missing. They slept until afternoon, tangled together, the bond between them humming with contentment. When Serena woke, Darius was already up, standing at the cave entrance and staring out at the mountains. She could feel his tension through the bond, the way his mind was already working through problems and strategies. "What is it?" she asked, joining him. "We can't hide forever." He glanced at her, his expression troubled. "Eventually, we have to face the council. And when we do, they'll try to kill me." "Yes." His arm came around her waist. "But they'll have to go through me first. And every alpha I can free, every bond you break, that's one more ally, one more soldier who'll stand with us instead of against us." "A rebellion?" "A reckoning." His voice was hard. "They've been corrupting the alpha bonds for years, turning proud wolves into puppets, using them to consolidate power, eliminate rivals, control territories. It ends now." She leaned into him, drawing strength from his certainty. "And if we lose? Then we lose together." He turned to face her, his hands framing her face. "But I don't plan on losing. Not when I finally have something worth fighting for." The mark on her neck warmed, and she felt his sincerity through the bond, the way he meant every word. "So what's our first move?" "We start small. Find the alphas I know are compromised, but not too far gone. You break their bonds, we gather allies." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "And then we march on the council and burn their house of lies to the ground." "When you put it that way, it sounds almost easy." "It won't be. It'll be dangerous and bloody, and there's a good chance we'll both die before it's over." He kissed her forehead. "But you'll be free. They all will be. And that's worth any price." She thought about her grandmother, about the freed alpha who'd bought them time, about every person who'd been taken in the purges. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow." He pulled her closer. "Tonight, we rest. Tomorrow, we change the kingdom." They stood there as the sun set, two people bound by magic and choice, staring out at a world that wanted them dead. But Serena wasn't afraid anymore. She could feel Darius's presence in her mind, steady and sure. Could feel the power humming under her skin, ready to break chains and free slaves. Could feel, for the first time in months, like she had a purpose beyond survival. "Darius? Thank you." She turned in his arms to look at him. "For saving me. For giving me a choice. For—" She touched the mark on her neck. "For this." His eyes softened. "Thank you for trusting me. For choosing us, even when you had every reason not to." He kissed her, slow and sweet. "And for being brave enough to stand with me." "Well, when you put it that way," she pulled back, a smile tugging at her lips. Maybe I should have thought this through better. Too late now. You're stuck with me. Stuck with the Alpha King. What a terrible fate. His laugh was warm against her mouth. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. They kissed again as the last light faded, as the stars began to emerge overhead, as the bond between them settled into something permanent and profound. Tomorrow they would start a war. Tomorrow they would face enemies and danger and impossible odds. But tonight, they had each other. 3 weeks later, the council chamber was exactly as cold and imposing as Serena had imagined. High ceilings, stone walls, 7 Alpha Council members sitting in judgment behind a curved table. All of them wearing the silver insignias of their office. All of them radiating power and barely concealed hostility. And all of them staring at her like she was a problem to be eliminated. Darius stood beside her, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. The mark on her neck was visible. He'd insisted on that, had told her it was important that they see she was claimed, protected, his. 23 freed alphas stood behind them. 23 wolves she'd unbound, who'd sworn themselves to Darius's cause. It wasn't an army, but it was a start. You bring a human into this sacred chamber, the head counselor said, his voice dripping disdain. A marked human. Explain yourself, Darius. I bring my mate, Darius replied evenly, and I bring evidence of your corruption. He gestured, and 3 of the freed alphas stepped forward, each recounting their experiences. The forced bonds, the compulsion, the way their wills had been stripped from them, turned into tools for the council's agenda. The counselors listened with expressions ranging from boredom to barely concealed rage. You have no proof, the head counselor said when they'd finished. Just the word of confused alphas who've clearly been manipulated. I have proof, Serena said quietly. All eyes turned to her. She stepped forward, ignoring the way her hands wanted to shake, feeling Darius's confidence flowing through the bond. I can feel the bonds. The corrupted ones you've placed on nearly half the alphas in this kingdom. She met the head counselor's eyes. And I can name every single one of you who's been twisting them for your own gain. Silence at first, then utter chaos. The counselor on the far left moved first, pure flaring as he reached for some weapon, some spell. But Serena was faster. She'd been practicing for weeks, learning to harness the power that had always been inside her. She reached out with her Unmaker magic and shattered the bond controlling him. He collapsed, gasping, and the room erupted. 2 counselors bolted for the doors. 3 more tried to attack. Darius's freed alphas moved to intercept them while Darius himself faced down the head counselor, his power flooding the room. Serena moved through the chaos like a storm, touching each corrupted bond she could sense, breaking them one after another. Some of the bonded alphas turned on their masters the moment they were freed. Others collapsed, overwhelmed by their sudden liberation. When the dust settled, 5 counselors were dead. 2 were in custody, their crimes exposed, their power broken, and the kingdom had changed forever. Later, Serena stood on the balcony of the king's residence, staring out at the capital city. Darius came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. How many more? She asked quietly. At least 100 compromised alphas still out there, maybe more. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But we have time. We have allies. And we have you. I'm just an apothecary's daughter who got lucky. You're an unmaker who changed the course of history. He turned her to face him. You're my mate, and you're the reason we won today. She touched the mark on her neck, her claiming, her choice, her bond to this impossible man who'd saved her and damned her, and loved her all at once. What happens now? Now we rebuild. We find every alpha they've enslaved, and we free them. We create a council that serves instead of controls. He smiled. And we figure out how to rule a kingdom together, because, like it or not, you're queen now. I never wanted to be queen. And I never wanted to fall in love with a human who could unmake everything I am, with a touch. His hands cupped her face, But here we are. She kissed him as the sun set over the capital, as their city began to settle into an uneasy peace, as their future stretched out before them, uncertain and dangerous, and theirs. They'd survived the night. They'd survived the council. And whatever came next, corruption to root out, bonds to break, enemies to face, they would survive that too. Together. Because she'd chosen him, and he'd chosen her. And sometimes love was just as simple and as complicated as that. Yours